I'm Myron Sylling. I farm with my father and brother. We run about 1,350 acres of corn and soybeans. We're raising non-GMO corn. We are growing Roundup Ready soybeans currently. We are a no-till operation, have been since the mid-90s, and currently doing fall-seeded cover crops. We currently use a John Deere 1790 split row planter, so 30-inch corn, 15-inch row soybeans. Done a lot of modifications to it, but that's the basic unit. Nitrogen early is important, no-till. We like having pop-up fertilizer in furrow. The no-till soil is generally a little bit cooler in the spring than the tilled soil for a short period of time, and that in-furrow pop-up fertilizer helps overcome that and get nutrients to the young plant when it needs it early. This is our in-furrow system, so we are currently running Keaton seed firmers it's got a tube inside of this for our pop-up delivery into the seed trench. So we're both firming the seed into the bottom of the trench and providing some starter fertilizer for that seed in the furrow. We do run a piston pump. This is the John Deere factory piston pump. We use that to apply our in-furrow fertilizer, our pop-up. We are applying right now 4 gallons of 624-6 with micros, and we are adding a gallon of water to it just for a little extra energy source for our plants. You can see we have the John Deere single disc holters on our planter. These are only on the corn rows. This is where we're adding our nitrogen right now. We're applying 27 gallons to the acre of a mix of 32% and ammonium thiosulfate for our ground. Now, studies have shown now that the applying out the back at your closing wheel system is a viable option and may yield just as well as this system. Another thing that people ask about is the closing wheel system. This is one of the bean units, but one of the first things we did was we put Dawn curved tine closing wheels on. On the no-till system, feel it's pretty important to have a staggered or a spike type closing wheel to help shatter sidewall compaction. These have a natural, because of the curve, they will crumble in the sidewall, but they also limit themselves on depth. If you run a true spading wheel, you definitely need to lighten up your spring pressure or remove it completely. They can penetrate too deep and actually lift your seed out of the furrow so that you don't keep your uniform depth, which can then affect your emergence. In a no-till system, the rubber wheels don't do a very good job of fracturing the sidewall or closing the seed trench unless the soil is extremely dry. Otherwise, to get it to close, you have to run so much downforce on your closing wheels, you end up causing some compaction, and that's harder for the young seedling to emerge from. An important thing is your double disc openers. You want to inspect those every spring. Check your diameter on those. We replace ours with a total of a 1/4 inch wear on the radius, so the diameter of 14.5 inches on a 15-inch coulter. We are throwing it away. You'll see there's a slight bevel edge on these coulters or discs, and some people say that you can run them until that bevel is gone, but at that point we feel it's much too blunt and you end up possibly hairpinning residue in your seed trench, which can then lead to uneven emergence due to moisture. A seed cannot wick moisture away from residue in the seed trench. It needs soil contact for that residue. These bean rows that run right behind the tires on this planter, we do have coulters to help loosen compaction, aid penetration for the bean rows. On all the other rows, there are trash whippers. Now, on the rear units, they are not floating. These front corn units all have the Dawn GFX hydraulic row cleaners on them. The bean rows are all fixed row cleaners that mount directly to the row. You can see on this unit, we've added an additional spring on top of the airbags that provide downforce to these units behind the rows because of the extra compaction the wheels cause. Without having a system in the cab that reads my downforce or my actual applied pressure on these closing wheels, I have no idea how much extra weight I need on these rows to compensate for the lift that these coulters and row cleaners are applying. So the way this planter is set up is our bean rows are still airbag downforce, and I have a separate control in the cab that I can adjust the air pressure in these bags. I have to run an additional almost 100 pounds of downforce per unit on my bean rows that have attachments mounted to the row than I do on my corn rows. And the reason is these Dawn GFX row cleaners are mounted to the main frame of the planter. They are not mounted to the unit. So they require no extra force or don't lift on our planting unit. In here, we have the Dawn reflex system. So we have individual row control hydraulic downforce on every row. That is controlled from the cab of the tractor. There's a computer module on every row. But again, the reflex system and the Dawn GFXs, those are kind of the Cadillac system. They are expensive. You do not have to have those to no-till, but they're about the best that you have right now on the market. We switched to no-till back in the 90s. We immediately saw a reduction in the erosion that we were having on our hills. Huge savings was both in equipment and fuel usage, time. All those were major reasons for us to switch to no-till.